Welcome back to Raising the Glass, the Tipple, where we slow down the conversations and bring data, humanity, and real-world insight together. I am delighted to welcome back Miranda Ballard from NielsenIQ to the Tipple. Welcome back, Miranda. Miranda's joined us on the podcast before, and she's someone I always turn to when I want to make sense of what's really going on beneath the headlines. She's the data, insight, and statistics guru who helps us put the numbers behind the behaviours, and just as importantly, the behaviours behind the numbers. She absolutely loved that intro and will be updating her LinkedIn profile.
I was just thinking, it's going right in the profile.
I saw that. I saw your little eyes light up. Now, today we're digging into a topic that is everywhere right now. Big breath, we're doing it. Weight loss injections. Are we looking at a genuine long-term shift in consumer behaviour, or is this a boom and bust moment? And what does it really mean for health, for food, for drink, for retail, for hospitality, and the way we all think about well-being? So Miranda's here to help us separate the signal from the noise, and I cannot think of a better person to do it with.
Yay! Thank you for having me.
She's back. Spoiler alert. Miranda's the first guest we've had back bar Lottie when we do the end of the year specials. And Miranda is going to be a frequent flying guest of the podcast because genuinely you bring so much to the episodes, and thank you so much for agreeing to visit.
Honestly, my pleasure. I absolutely love the series. I love the guests that you have. I love the tone that you've got and the approach that you got and the different view on everything happening in the industry. So really, pleasure is all mine.
So today, hot off the holiday season, straight into the new year, we know that generally people's mindsets move a little bit to well-being, new year, new me. So this feels like a really apt episode for January. So let's talk about weight loss injections. It literally in the week that M&S have announced their range targeting GLP-1, Morrison's have done something similar in terms of a curated range. And these aren't designed just for anybody on GLP-1. They are nutrient-dense products, but they're leaning in with their branding. So does it feel now that weight loss injections have gone from niche to mainstream almost overnight? And from the data that you're seeing at NielsenIQ, how big is this moment really, and how fast is it moving?
Well, where do we even start? I get the privilege of seeing our friends across the pond go first because America went sooner. So when we started chatting about this months ago, and actually it was you who kind of really went, dude, we need to be ahead of this. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. I hadn't got my head.
Yeah, you heard it here
first. It really was.
I
hadn't got my head to it, and I didn't know anybody on it then. I have some friends now, but it was, you were way ahead of it. And I thought, well, let's start with the American data because they were tracking months ahead. Now, from a data perspective, it would have been brilliant if they all could have started using it on the same day. Wouldn't that be lovely? But
pesky.
What lack of respect for data. But overall, and then I'd love for you and me to try and work out, is this appetite suppressors or is this a perfect storm of a number of things? But one thing is absolutely certain is that consumption by volume, so in kilos and litres, in other words, yes, you can look at dollars and pounds, but then you've got price maybe growing, not volume. But let's look at kilos and litres, like how much actual volume are we consuming? And America and now UK is decline in our read. Now, disclaimer, we track trillions of transactions every day, but we can't track every transaction. So that sale may have left our universe, our read of all of the grocery retailers, every beep through the till. But there's no denying, and it's clear in the volume, kilos and litres, from 23 to 24, the UK and US had growth in consumption. Not a lot, well, it is a lot when you think of the numbers, but 1% growth. But 24 to 25 is now showing, and let me just put my glasses on to get the exact numbers, minus 1% versus year ago in the UK, minus 1.8% in the US versus year ago. And let's put that...
And I believe that's the first time ever that the United States have seen a volume decline year on year.
I believe so. I was going to wake up my US analytics colleagues to get a confirmation on that over the Christmas week.
Not for the Race in the Glass podcast over the Christmas, it's fine.
But in numbers, over 3 years, the US has seen 1.3% decline, which is 18 billion kilos. And the UK declining 1% versus a year ago is 9.1 billion kilos less. Like 9 billion kilos? Like that's so much substance.
It's just gone.
So yes, so coming back to the UK, there was that 1% growth year on year, 23 to 24, which is, what you'd hope. Let's keep growing. Now, this is where we want to be careful, because I was looking at this data with GLP in mind, I was like, there we go, clear as day. And then I was thinking, well, hang on, what if somebody moved to Uber Eats, or they got, Deliveroo or something? Or what if somebody found a niche in a direct-to-consumer e-com supplier? So there's many other reasons why that number might have declined. But if we're talking about a sample big enough to be very, very clear that volume, kilos, has reduced, it has. It just has. We are consuming less. If we then overlay everything else, it could be declining birth rates. Is it other trends like UPF? Is it fasting?
Yep.
Is it
cost of living crisis and people having that decision taken away from them?
Were we still correcting in 2023 the end of a COVID change in behaviour? So that looked like there was growth year on year, but was there? So this my disclaimer for my colleagues and my much more experienced analytics colleagues as well is, certainly I'm not saying the only cause of this, but here's where you and I then just go down rabbit holes, which I love. Let's look at what is declining. And what is really clear in the US and the UK is alternatives. So sweeteners to go in your tea, down 5% in the US, down 7% in the UK. And slimming bars, so bars with a clear message that you would have this instead of a chocolate bar. But even more than that, cereal bars, granola bars, they're down 5.1%, I think, 7%. Some of these substantial categories in the US really down. And what I was interested in is, did we go on this journey where the food industry and the manufacturers and the exceptionally clever people at the dominant big food companies, including private label, were very quick to adapt to a trend in food by producing an alternative and saying, it's cool, you didn't want to buy a Mars bar, no problem, you buy a cereal bar. Or we remember Milky Way, the sweet you can eat between meals without ruining your appetite. Okay, you want to, okay, go cereal bar. Or okay, you don't want, let's go slimming bar. Let's go a 90-calorie light bar. So the food industry very quickly came out with, don't worry, we've got you. You were going to buy this and now you're going to buy this. What's incredible is, for certainly the first time in my lifetime, and I'm pretty sure since post-war, it's now don't buy it at all for whatever reason. So
so this is the conversation we had. So I have a hypothesis, because you're right. This isn't people are eating less because of GLP-1 full stop. This is people are buying less for a number of reasons, but we do think GLP-1 is probably a big driver of that. But it's spending patterns, it's choices perhaps becoming more nuanced. But for some people, my hypothesis is that there are some people in the UK eating less calories per person as we were eating as a nation when we were rationed during the war.
The bell curve, if we continued on the trajectory, and this will be the question we won't be able to answer today, is how long is this here to stick around? But as you were saying, if we're then going to tablets, that's going to tap into a whole new lot who use it. If we're going, if it's competition's going to come in.
If it's more accessible, if it's cheap.
So the bell curve, where we have seen that steady 1% growth in volume of the countries for a number of reasons, any number of reasons, is declining. But if it continues to decline at this rate, the trajectory will return. And I'll share a couple of sort of screenshots and stuff in case it's useful afterwards, or we could use it when we're chatting about this. If the trajectory continued, where, take the UK, it had a 1% growth and then a and then a 0.1% growth over 3 years, but a 1% decline versus year ago, it's going down. So as we plot that, and we can now look at this data monthly, and we're starting to see these trends, this decline. Again, not in every category. There are categories flying up. Eggs, free-range eggs, a net increase of 400 million kilos. So 100 million kilos down on caged hen eggs, half a billion kilos up on free-range eggs. So then I went down a total rabbit warren. Oh my gosh, why, who? And then I was looking at profile and is it protein? Is it? So then I started thinking, okay, well, I don't think that's appetite suppressants. Maybe that's UPF. Maybe we're trying to pull back our food back to the source of protein rather than protein added products. Again, I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's something crazy happening over there with free range eggs.
But is that we are seeing a shopper change where GLP-1 is a driver into higher income households, and therefore you are perhaps seeing more spend in free range eggs than you would see in caged?
Yes.
Because of the difference in price.
There is, and I've been really interested to pick up on posts and notes about the demographic of GLP users or appetite suppressant users, and there is a skewed demographics to an affluent range. So it's not a reliable sample to say this is the behavior of everybody taking weight loss drugs, because it would factor in what can you afford. And those ones who have, and I was trying to find in the demographics, you can see a shift. It's the 45 to 55 age group that leveled up from caged hen to free range hen. And that suggests a little more time, a little more affluence. I was trying to find a crossover between other pack claims like fiber and protein and see if there was a pattern, especially protein, of course, for eggs. I couldn't see it definitively. I'm going to pull on that thread a little bit more. But age, real differences. When I went back to the cereal bar of going, okay, this feels just a hypothesis, like cereal bar would be something that could be really hit when you go from trying to control your appetite to not having one. Cereal bars feel like something you could do without, because they're not also used as part of a meal, and they don't form part of it's just something you could take out very quickly. And interestingly, it's the under 34s that almost halved their consumption of cereal bars. And really interesting, not the number of people who bought a cereal bar in 2025 in the UK, just the amount they purchased. They just bought less by nearly half.
Which makes sense, because if you're not hungry, if you are experiencing this suppressed appetite, then your snacking probably is down. And I do think there is this bit between, I think M&S, I think Morrison's, I think people in this place, retailers, brands that are leaning into the benefits that you need, because what we're also starting to see is not just more people using GLP-1, but more social media, more education, more. When it first came a bit more mainstream, it was drink a lot, have protein, have fiber. That's still the message, but people are sharing how they're getting that protein content in, that fiber content in. You start to see a bit of a community around it. There is loads of noise, loads of opinion, loads of emotion about this matter, and we're not here for any of that. But I guess what we're trying to talk about is those actual behaviour shifts that you're seeing in consumers, rather than just what's dominating the headlines. So the fact that we can't necessarily see a clear link, because I would have thought, if I think about drinks, for example, it's kind of the holy, I've got to get my protein up, I've got to get my fibre up, I've got to drink more. And if I'm really appetite suppressed, I don't want that. I don't even want that cereal bar. But a drink that either drives up my protein content or my fibre intake is perfect.
And that's where we're seeing soft drinks not in decline, and soft drinks with a fiber claim in growth. Let me just find the number on that one, because that was really interesting. Alcoholic beverages down. Where was the one? So in the US, where did I put soft drinks? The whole category down 1%, 43 million litres, but soft drinks with a fiber pack claim up 43%. Now, it's from a smaller number, but 4.5 million litres up versus the category is 2 billion. So the percentages we'd be careful not to compare, but a decline versus an increase is clear. But it's the other way around in the UK. Soft drinks was holding firm. And so far, there's no pattern that I can find that a pack claim for either fibre or protein or a supplement included, I'm not yet seeing. But in the US, it was across everything. Chocolate down 2%, but with a fibre claim up 13%. Tortilla chips down 2%, but with a fibre claim up 2%.
Do you think we're going to start to see that coming through? Because you're absolutely right. You know, the US is ahead of us. I think the latest stats in the UK have potentially 1 in 5 UK adults have tried some kind of weight loss injection at some point. Yeah. So we're getting a bit more familiar with it. If I think about some of those big brands in the US, those big fiber claimed soda brands, you've got Olipop, you've got Poppy, again, probably ahead of the UK market. Is it a case of that the bubble will burst, or is that coming down the line?
Again, opinion of one. And I also bring a huge personal bias to this because I've followed a fasting routine for 6 years. I did 5-2 for 2 years and 8-16 for 4. So I've already been a consumption reducer or a food controller in terms of hours. And there's nothing that you could sell me or position it in the hours that I'm choosing to fast. There's nothing that even the best brains at Mondelez could make me for me to want to buy it. So my caution, again, not a robust sample. One, my caution would be, if you sit around a table at a large food manufacturer thinking, right, how do we get on top of this trend? The most important message is we're eating less. So, and the adult using it is eating less. So we're seeing the drop in the total household, even when there's one user, of between 10 and 35% purchasing. But we're not seeing the decrease, of course, in pet until we get fat jabs for cats, which my cat could actually do with.
And she's not overweight. She's just really furry, and she's carrying her holiday season weight.
And you know what? We're all carrying a little extra warmth.
So a little personal message to my children who have said the cat's looking a little. She's not bulky. She's just
heavy boned. Yeah, don't make me choose between the cat. So pet. Kids, we're not in children, we're not seeing a reduction, because their appetite isn't suppressed, but we are seeing interesting purchasing decisions and a slight premiumization in things like pet and household and kids. So if I were making decisions at a large global conglomerate, rather than stack a load of money straight away into what else can we sell them, which is the pattern that's always been. If you think of every food trend from Aitkins
to cereal bar.
Exactly. As I became my own food purchaser at sort of 18, 19, I hit, you buy an innocent smoothie, it would have been 2006, you buy an innocent smoothie, not a soft drink. You buy green and black chocolate, not a dairy milk, or you buy Tyrrell's root vegetables. And it was about, getting a sort of better, sometimes confused with lower calorie. It wasn't, and they weren't saying that, but it was about buying a better alternative and a food movement. So you could ride this wave and immediately come out with something, which was super interesting to see these nutrient dense. But I'm going to be so interested to see if it alienates the majority of the population not using appetite suppressants because it's seen as something specialist. And I know they'll be very cautious with the language. I'll be interested to see if it alienates too many and doesn't tap into the person on appetite suppressants because they don't have an appetite. It's just such a different strategy for us to work out how to sell to them.
You're spot on. The ranges that are coming out, I think, will absolutely land for somebody who's been on a GLP-1 journey, who is maybe doing some degree of understanding how appetite, when it starts to come back, and understanding getting that nutrient density into you. Because we've all heard the scaremongering and the horror stories of your hair and your teeth and the Ozempic face, which is, if you research it, is just what happens when you lose a lot of weight very quickly if you're not driving your nutrient density. So I think it will be something that some GLP-1 users actually are quite excited about. Those ones that are educated on that nutrient density. I think it will be something that non-GLP-1 users, who again are aware of the need for nutrient density, that protein, that fiber, that good quality calories in. I think actually, as long as the branding is not too, it would be interesting actually to see how people who aren't using GLP-1, whether they do or don't want to buy into it. From a lot, or anecdotally that I've seen on social media, people actually, I'm not a GLP-1 user, but I really like the idea of it. But again, I think we're going to start to see that influence. And this is what it's about, right? It's about people becoming more educated about diet, about health, about nutrient density. So why now, I guess? Is it that science is finally catching up? Is it that we've got changing attitudes to weight, to health? Is there something even, this is a huge question, is there something bigger going on culturally? What's suddenly made this happen?
I wondered if we'd got a bit tired of the immediately accessible, completely surrounded by food, because now it can come to our door and we can drive through and we can order D2C and we can, it was just so plentiful. And there was always something immediate. I mean, you look at the rise of meat alternatives when there was a vegan trend. Immediately, the retailers and the manufacturers could respond loud and clear. We're going to reduce a little bit of fresh meat space. We're going to, because a food trend happened that created a demand on the shelf very, very quickly. But this isn't that. This is a reduction in buying anything at all. I don't want to buy it. There's a risk that if we start producing specialist products and we don't have the volume, we can't be as competitive with the price. Now, if you're not hungry and you're buying something because you just need to have it, are you going to buy the fresh $7.99 ready meal that contains all your nutrients, or are you going to buy the fiber supplement in a shaky pill? Because if you're not hungry for it, one's going to seem more expensive. What's the value proposition? Can I just get the fiber that I need? Can it just be in a soft drink can on the go whilst I drive? And we are, when I looked at the US, because I was interested in vitamins and supplements, are people just going to move to taking it in a tablet form? Given that it will tap into people open to the idea of having sort of a medicine or supplement or vitamins. And it was the vitamins category down 2%, 359 million kilos down, but a 9% increase, 2.4 million kilos up for specific fiber supplements. And supplements down 1%. So that's 155 million kilos down in the US, but with a fiber claim up 7%. 53 million kilos up. And this is where when I pulled on the supplement and the vitamins, what then became really clear to me, again, disclaimer, I would need to make an actual cohort of these two styles. We need to look at people in two very separate buckets: fitness and foodness, for want of a better word. So if it's called a meal replacement shake in the US, it's down 13%, 181 million kilos. But if it's called a performance nutrition shake, that's up 18%. So sport, there's two buckets of people here. There's people using sport and fitness to be healthy and, I assume, to have weight control in there. And there's a very separate group of people using food to control their weight. And it doesn't seem yet in the US or in the UK early results that person can be the same. It seems like you're either fitness and sport or your weight loss through food management. So I think that would be one I would be interested to track those two. And I've got one of those on a monthly line, and you can see weight loss. Okay. It was called weight management shakes and meal and complete meal replacement. But the one that was showing down is something where it's a meal replacement, but showing up almost the same product if you look at the ingredients, fitness sports shake. So I think that's another call out. We shouldn't confuse them.
That is that added to element, isn't it? And I think you talked about, and I love that fitness and foodness. But even within GLP-1, we're going to have some degree of segmentation. So we're going to have early adopters who are starting to learn to balance it. Within that, there's going to be people who are microdosing. There's going to be people who are coming off it. You're going to have people coming in and trialing it now, particularly this time of year. I'll get on it for a bit. I'll get off it. January, love it. And so even within this small but growing population, there's going to be different behaviors. And if I think about some of the sweeping statements, I do think it will, for a lot of people, come back to, if I'm only going to consume few calories, I will make choices in those calories. And those choices will be different for that segmentation. So if I think about people maybe reducing alcohol, giving up alcohol, actually, am I looking for a drink that is an occasional drink that has adaptogens or something that gives me something a little bit more? Am I moving out of dairy-based drinks into sodas because I don't want the calories and the thickness of it, but I still want some of that benefit? Am I moving into this nutrient density products because I'm still learning how to, either I'm too busy or I haven't got time, I want an easy solution, or I'm still learning this convenience of it's done for me and I trust it, and that macro element is there and that nutrient density. It all comes down to, I suppose, a bit of a real tension between this personal empowerment that we're seeing of people choosing to go on the journeys that are right for them versus unintended consequences for the industry. And there's almost that big pharma versus big food challenge that we're seeing coming on. So we've talked about a bit of it in terms of what we think is happening, but where do you see those opportunities? And where do you see the risks for retailers, for the big brands, for the small brands? Who's going to win? Because you've said it earlier, and I'm going to say it again because you're right. What we've done before won't work here. Pivot and respond because of increased demand isn't the model now, because for the first time ever, we've got overall decreased demand. We've got increased demand in spikes, but overall, we've got a contraction of the market. So who's the winners and losers?
I think it's going to be so hard ultimately for the decision maker, the retail buyer, with the total pressure and the accountability to make sure you're not just delivering your category performance, but you're literally stocking what your shoppers want. Immense pressure. How much harder is it going to be for you guys to risk innovation when it's harder in a declining consumption to say that an innovative category expansion is a good idea? So now then, when you come a step back at the manufacturer coming to pitch to a retail buyer, hey, we did that fantastic coffee product and now we've done a coffee ice cream, it's never been, let's take it for a spin, because there's so much money involved in trying to stock a new product or trying to expand a category. How much riskier it will be to give innovation a try. And therefore, if we come back to a manufacturer level, do they pull back on innovation, but then it all goes stale? And that's where I think, and we're already starting to see a trend, and in the US, of mergers. We're going to start to divest bits that don't work with our supply chain. We're de-risking, our volume dropping. Even within a large manufacturer, a volume drop, they're going to feel that. Now we're not getting the economies of scale. So if I went worst case, like, scary, it will be that prices have to go up because volumes are declining. That's always what has to happen if any volume declines. Not in every category, but where we're seeing that decline, prices will have to go up. Now there's a risk with higher prices that there's less consumption as well, and we start to feel the sort of spiral. Retailers taking far less risk on innovation, and eventually manufacturers slowing down innovation. And then that creates a little apathy in the shopper because it's not this fresh new category. It's harder for the retailers to compete with each other because you need the differentiation to bring the shopper with the rest of their 140 quid a week spend. We're trying to pull them in. So then do we start to see some consolidation of retailers like we're seeing in France, 8 down to 6, probably 5. So this sort of general slowing because a little bit of decline stuff.
Yeah.
But that's everything going wrong, which and why I love the food industry more than any other industry is we don't let that happen. Historically, we just don't, because everybody still eats and the shopper still buys, and shopping in the UK is still the number one leisure sport. So I know it won't be worst case. It won't be ground to a halt of an innovationless, boring aisle only stocking exactly the nutrient we need. And I do think that, we have seen huge trends come and go in the consumer shopper as well. So I don't think it would continue to fuel that decline. But I think the ones that will win out are the ones who start with a broader front lineup of innovation ideas and test and validate in a far more assertive but brutally realistic way. And it isn't going to be the first people to come out with innovations. It will be the savviest people with innovations that will be able to come to a retailer and say, they will still buy this. And even if it takes from that sale, this is still better because, and there needs to be a longer strategy for each brand rather than just, oh, don't worry, Mondelez could buy Grenade because, you want a chocolate bar or you want a cereal bar. We got you. I don't believe that's going to be quite savvy enough now to figure out what it is they're going to keep buying. And I also think of those large ones that play across categories have maybe less risk if they also play in household or kids, or, if the innovations just for a time perhaps are elsewhere or frozen rather than fresh. We're seeing some comes and goes a little bit there. But so, yes, a long way of saying I don't know. And worst case, you can write down on a piece of paper because you can plot that downward trajectory. Retailer, manufacturer, and shopper, you can plot it if you carried on the lines. But I don't believe that will happen. I just don't.
You're right. I mean, what I would say before everyone's going, the world is going to end when it comes to food and drink retail in the UK. That's not what we're saying. And I think we have to be mindful of, we've specifically focused in on this because the Tipple is about advice and what's going on in the industry. And this is one of the biggest things affecting our industry. But it is still only 20% of people who have used it as an adult at some point. And so let's not forget that's still a large percentage of the population that haven't used it. It's that savvy approach that you talk about is really interesting because I think that's where some of the winners will be. That the people who are innovating, who can say this product hooks into GLP-1 here, but also hooks into this shopper profile over here or this shopper profile here. So where are those products that have got a nod to whether it's protein, whether it's fiber, whether it's hydration, whether it's functionality, that actually, because at its heart of it, what GLP-1 is doing is suppressing appetites, but making people think more about what they're consuming quality in, I suppose, which we would all benefit from. And there are people in the market who want all of that without necessarily being on GLP-1 as well. So I think those brands, those manufacturers that are thinking about how does my product show up for more broad demographics with perhaps a laser focus on this element of that GLP-1 segmentation. And I do think, as we were talking about, the industry needs to get its head very quickly around it is not GLP-1 users. It is GLP-1 user first and fast. It is GLP-1 adopter. It is GLP-1 improver. Whatever those segments are going to be called, there we are already, some people are weeks into their journey, some people are months, some people hitting on a year. So that means there is different segmentation. Closing question. We spend a lot of time looking back at data, right? We look back and that helps us predict the future. So think of this as a prediction. But if you fast forward 3-5 years' time, do you think we'll look back at not necessarily what's happened to the market, but at weight loss injections as a turning point in how we think about health, how we think about consumption, or a moment that forced the industry perhaps to ask better questions about prevention, about nutrition, and about long-term well-being?
Oh, great question.
I thought I was quite leading in that. Should change my tonality. Do you think A or B?
I'm totally with you on B. I don't think it was weight loss drugs. I think it's shall we start to have that slightly difficult conversation that we can't just keep bringing out new products and expect it to add incremental pounds in their trolley. We can't just keep asking them to buy more. And so with all the impacts, with all the, we will look back and I don't believe it will be as significant a cause. I think it will be part of the whole conversation about reducing, because we're also talking about reducing waste, reducing energy consumption. We're reducing now. Do I need it? It went from, it doesn't matter if I need it or not. It's so accessible, I'm going to have it.
Fast fashion is a prime example.
Exactly. And so there were I'm with you. I think it has been a very significant knock round the face for everybody to say, do we need to have a conversation about declining consumption generally? And then when you start to list declining birth rate or UPF or fasting and inflation and all these other ones, I think they go, oh, you know what? Add it up. That's a lot. Put all of those together. And then there's a far higher count by shopper in an aging population than on GLP. So we shouldn't lose sight, as you said, it shouldn't just be focused on the people suppressing their appetite. We should still stay focused on the larger trends. Like when I looked at cereal bars, it halved by the under 34s, but it increased 30% between 45 and 55. What did they do differently? Like there's growth. There's like we've talked about with alcohol before.
There's always growth.
And then you don't want everybody just to chase after it and sort of suck the life out of it. But I just think that point of what if let's start with not assuming that the shopper is going to buy something. Now, how do we sell to them? So that's where we need to keep up as a data company. Let's not just assume these shoppers are going to buy whatever we put in front of them. And that's going to trickle throughout the shopper, the manufacturers, the retailers, and the companies like us that invoice the industry. We're really dependent on that competitiveness. That's what a lot of our data does, people fighting it out for shelf space. How do we get savvy as a company to stop assuming that shoppers will just keep buying more? But then that also fills me with excitement. That's thrilling to me that we'll start to look at it differently.
And I think we have to look at it differently because there is a generation coming through that is a different generation, but is looking at where's my food coming from? What's the quality of my food? So that cereal bars in that age group, for me, coincides with the fact that we know that more younger people are eating less breakfast. It's and the breakfast quality that they're looking for is very different from what we necessarily had when we were eating our light chocolate bar in between our meals. And I suppose the poignant conversation about it all is actually, is it really, really, really bad if we are seeing people reducing consumption? Because there are generations out there, of which we are one, where we haven't grown up with the scarcity mindset. If we think about our parents or our grandparents, grandparents of my age group who can still remember rationing, that exactly as you've described, it's here, it's now, it's accessible. I can get it today, I can get it tomorrow, I can get as much as I want. Actually, the bigger piece here is we know that there are too many calories in the UK market per person than there should be. So maybe it's not all a bad thing. Maybe it's just about making sure that you can pivot to make sure you command your share of calories.
And if your business can survive on lower volumes, you have a very solid business. If you are still growing if you can afford to reduce your what you're selling and you're not dependent on just volume, those are the solid businesses that will come through. Those are the strong ones. So then if they start looking at, okay, well, maybe if I just bring my consumption projections for one market here, I start looking a little bit more seriously at export. So now I'm really looking to expand my distribution rather than put the pressure on one market. And we start to look, okay, and that will bring in competition and more options for distribution and distributors and exporters. And so, there's a little moment where we all just look up and go, oof. But that historically in every industry has let the Darwinian strong ones come through. The ones that were strongest and in a position to evolve and adapt will shine through and they'll become stronger companies, and the weak ones will fall or merge. be acquired.
Yeah, and this is and that's, this is the flywheel. It's that moment in time where we're going to turn it and we're going to see that slight shift. Miranda, thank you as always for helping us cut through the noise, bringing the conversation back to evidence, behaviour and reality. I am going to do a shout out to our listeners because you are going to come back. Tell us what you want Miranda to go down a rabbit warrant on. We will talk about all kinds of data and shopper psychology for hours. Just give us a topic and I can guarantee you we'll find a data point that you didn't know existed. So drop us an email at hello@raisingtheglass.co.uk with anything and everything. I genuinely love these conversations. There is always an energy behind them. And I actually like the fact that they don't give us really neat answers. I genuinely do, because they give us the opportunity to ask better questions, right? And in a space as complex and as personal as weight, health and well-being, I think that's okay. I think it's about the conversation.
I agree. I love it. My favorite thing data can do is give you confidence to ask the questions. So it can't give you the answers. As you said, you look back, you're reporting the news, so you can't predict what's going to happen in the future, but could you be a little bit more confident to question it? And that's where you inspire me. You always ask these things. You're not afraid to challenge it. You're such an important part of the industry, and you're the one going, oi, I think we all need to have a conversation about this. So really, thank you so much for letting me chat to you with it. I find it just totally thrilling and it opens my eyes more. So I'm really, really grateful. Thank you.
I love it. It's 2026. We'll have more data points. We'll have more of those. Should we just have a look at this? So thanks for being part of the journey.
Thank you, Ron.
That's Raising the Glass, the Tipple. It's about creating space for honest conversations that help us understand what's really changing and why it matters. So to everyone listening, thank you for raising a glass with us. If this episode sparks something for you, share it, talk about it, check out our other episodes, tell us what you want us to talk about, and keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay curious and keep having the conversations that matter and asking those big questions.